thinking about it.
Okay. It's like we're looks like we're live, Noah.
The bar is at 80%. We are now live.
Well, good morning, everyone. We're getting a little bit of a late start this morning as we're waiting for a couple of subcommittee members to get to their desk to log in, and we'll be starting momentarily. So just hang with us for a few more minutes.
I am in the Capitol complex, so you could start the meeting.
Thank you, Representative Hansen. So good morning. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the LCCMR Subcommittee on Strategic Planning on Tuesday, September 24th. Our location is remote through electronic means, and we do have one member that is at the State Capitol building. So I would like to have us do a roll call to establish a quorum. So can one of our staff members do a roll call for us, please?
You bet, Madam Chair. Albrecht.
Here.
Albrecht here. Green. Green is excused. Hansen. Hansen. We'll circle back to him. Heinzman.
Here.
Heinzman here. Langseth.
Langseth present.
Langseth present. McEwen.
Hansen here.
Hansen here. McEwen. Reese. Reese is excused. And Madam Chair, we have 4 present, 1 excused.
Thank you. So we have established a quorum. I know that Member Reese is perhaps going to be joining us in about an hour, and also Senator McEwen has an engagement until a little bit later, 9:30 or so, and she'll be joining us then as well. So thank you all for coming today and helping us establish that quorum. So meeting times, agenda, and materials can be found on the LCCMR meetings page for those watching on YouTube. And this meeting is being held in accordance with Minnesota Statute 13D.015, state entity meetings by telephone or interactive technology. We also have some feedback forms on the LCCMR webpage that you can use for disability access. So with that, I'm going to ask us to look at the minutes before us on July 31st and ask for a motion to approve those minutes unless there are changes or corrections. Is there a motion to approve? And maybe I'll ask, thank you, Committee Member Langseth. I'm not sure I needed a motion for that, but I believe I do. And because we're remote, we need to have a roll call to approve those minutes, as I recall. So let's do a roll call to approve the minutes of July 31st, 2024.
Albrecht.
Yes.
Albrecht, yes. Green is excused. Hansen.
Here. Yes.
Hansen, yes. Heinzman. Heinzman. Langseth.
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. McEwen. Reese is excused. We'll try going back up to Heinzman.
Representative Heinzman is on mute, so perhaps he needs to unmute.
Senator McEwen, we might need to come back to the minutes, Madam Chair, in a moment. Okay.
Thank you. So next on our agenda is the overview of current recommendations, and Mike Campana, is our staff member, is going to review these. These are decisions that we've already been made, but since we meet infrequently, it's often helpful to go over some of the past work that we've done just to remind ourselves of where we are. And we'll go through each one of Mr. Campana will go through each one of these, the vision and mission statement, the ENRTF goals, the TF strategies to date, and the LCCMR goals and strategies to date, and then take any questions that members have about what we've already adopted. So with that, I will pass it over to Mr. Campana. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yeah, since this is your last scheduled meeting, we thought it'd be a good idea to just write a quick overview of where you are at the moment, what's been recommended and what's not. So the first thing is the subcommittee has adopted a recommendation for a new vision and mission statement. So the recommended vision is, just to remind you all, is Minnesota's lands, waters, fish, and wildlife are plentiful, healthy, resilient, and appreciated for their intrinsic value as well as the benefits they provide us all. And the recommended mission statement is the mission of the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund is to fund environmental and natural resource projects that best protect, conserve, preserve, and enhance Minnesota's air, water, land, fish, wildlife, and other natural resources. So that recommendation will go into the draft strategic plan for the full commission's consideration. Second, the subcommittee has adopted a recommendation for 7 goals related to the desired outcomes that will result from ENRTF funding. Generally, these goals relate to resiliency, land, water, fish and wildlife, energy, access and opportunities, or education and outreach, outdoor recreation, and emerging issues. And I can just quickly read through those goals that have been adopted as a recommendation. So the resiliency goal reads, Minnesota's environment, natural resources, and communities are resilient in the face of climate change, land use changes, and extreme weather events. Goal 2 reads, Minnesota's water resources are better managed for both water quantity and quality to support aquatic life, drinking water, recreation, and other uses. Goal 3 reads, Minnesota has healthy and diverse aquatic and terrestrial wildlife and plant populations that sustain and enhance the state's environment, economy, and quality of life. Goal 4 reads, Minnesota's public and private lands, including forests, grasslands, wetlands, and agricultural lands, provide long-term benefits to fish, wildlife, and people. Goal 5 reads, Minnesota responds quickly and proactively to emerging environmental and natural resources issues. Goal 6 reads, Minnesota achieves reliance on renewable energy in all sectors, including transportation, building, industry, agriculture, and others. And Goal 7 reads, all Minnesotans, especially young people, have access to and take advantage of opportunities to connect to the lands and waters of Minnesota, including culturally relevant and innovative approaches. So those are currently the goals that have been recommended for funding from the ENRTF that will be included in the draft strategic plan. The third thing the subcommittee has adopted is recommendations for strategies to achieve 6 of those 7 goals. I'm not going to read those specific strategies, but the one goal that you have not yet adopted strategies for is the goal related to fish and wildlife, and that's why you'll be considering that later on the agenda. And finally, the subcommittee has adopted recommendations for 2 out of the 7 discussed goals and strategies related to LCCMR communications and the proposal process. So these are the goals and strategies, not necessarily related directly to how the ENRTF funds things, but how the LCCMR operates and its goals for that. And specifically, the commission had sort of asked the subcommittee to focus on communications and the proposal process. So the 2 goals that have been adopted are the public is aware of and understands the purpose of the LCCMR and the ENRTF and their shared mission. And the goal that the public is aware of ENRTF funding opportunities and understands the funding application and recommendation process. And there are about 4 strategies that you have adopted under Goal 2 and 5 strategies under Goal 3. So that sort of summarizes where the subcommittee is right now in terms of making recommendations for inclusion in the strategic plan.
Thank you, Mr. Campana. Are there any questions about any of the information that has just been shared? So we've got a bit of work, those items, the strategies to date and the LCCMR our goals and strategies to date, have a little bit more work to do on them, and that's what we're going to accomplish today. So I'm going to go back to see if Representative Heinzman is on, and we can have approval of the minutes. Oh, excuse me. First, I see a hand up by Representative Hansen. Did you have a question?
Yes, so it appears we have to revote on a couple items because they didn't reach the 4 votes. Will we need to do an overall vote on the goals then as well? Do we do the individuals and then an overall vote?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's coming up under action number 5. Well, number 4, we have to look at the fish and wildlife goals and choose either A or B, and then vote on the fish and wildlife goal 6, that is. And then we have to, that's the ENRTF strategies. And then when we look at the LCCMR goals and strategies, goals 2 and 3 have been adopted. And we need to look at goals 1, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And the question will become, should we adopt them all as one, or should we look at them individually? So that we'll be coming to that action in a few minutes in the agenda. Does that help you?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Mm-hmm. So with that, I'm just going to ask again, is Representative Heinzman available, and we can take a vote on the adoption of the minutes. We have a motion that has been made to adopt the minutes.
I am available. Sorry, I wasn't earlier.
That happens. Okay, so Becca, can you take the roll on adoption of the minutes from July 31st, 2024?
Yes, so Albrecht,
Yes.
yes. Green is excused. Hansen,
Yes,
yes. Heinzman. Yes.
Heinzman, yes.
Heinzman, yes. Langseth,
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. McEwen is excused. And Reese is excused. So, Madam Chair, we have 4 yes.
Thank you. So those minutes are adopted as presented. So next on our agenda is item number 4, the ENRTF strategies. And you have some information on that, and I will turn that over to Mr. Campana to just review for us what our action is on that. The fish and wildlife strategies is the last ENRTF strategy that we need to address, as I recall.
Yes, Madam Chair, that's correct. You have adopted the strategies under 6 of the goals for ENRTF funding, and this is the final goal that strategies have not yet been adopted. So this is what we commonly refer to as the fish and wildlife goal. So Minnesota's healthy and diverse aquatic and terrestrial wildlife and plant populations that sustain and enhance the state's environment, economy, and quality of life. Currently, there are 7 strategies you are considering under that goal. For the 6th strategy, there are actually 2 options right now that are under consideration. At the last meeting, you did take votes on one to use the option 1 and one to use option 2. Neither of those received threshold of 4 votes. So that's why it's in front of you again right now. And if you'd like, I can actually read through each of these strategies just so it's clear to everybody. I can also share my screen if it's easier for people to see it on the screen if they don't have it in front of you. It's up to you.
I think that sharing your screen would be very helpful.
All right,
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I will do that.
I have it in front of me, but I know most people don't, and some of, especially on the phone, it's hard to toggle between looking at a document online and having their screen on for the meeting as well. So thank you, Mr. Campana, for doing that to us. So just as a review, as he brings that up, we have looked at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and number 7 goals, or should say strategies for this, but number 6 had 2 options, and we weren't able to decide between option 6A or option 6B. And so that's what we're looking at today, and then we'll try to adopt this entire set of strategies for this goal 3 for fish and wildlife after we review option 6A and B.
All right, Madam Chair, I'm going to share it. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, I could see that. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm sorry, Madam Chair, did you want me to just go through 6A and 6B first or go through all of them?
Let's just review them all, just as a
Okay.
reminder. Thank you.
Sure. As I mentioned, there are currently 7 strategies under consideration. Strategy 1 would be to fund projects that research species or ecosystems and develop strategies to effectively manage, maintain, protect, and restore healthy habitats and populations. Strategy 2 is monitor the health of natural systems to support and improve species management and conservation strategies. Strategy 3 currently reads, support and provide technical assistance and/or planning support to private landowners on cost-effective, proven strategies and technologies to develop and restore diverse native habitat. Strategy 4 would be to promote public awareness on the importance of diverse wildlife and plant populations through comprehensive education programs. Strategy 5 is to prevent the introduction, reduce the spread, or develop and demonstrate alternative control techniques for invasive species. Then we get to strategy 6, where there are currently 2 options. Option 1, which we've labeled 6A, reads, develop plans and/or implement conservation actions to protect, conserve, or restore species with a priority on efforts that maintain or create connected, continuous habitat or address the needs of vulnerable, declining, poorly understood, or sensitive species. The second option for that strategy would be just to read, develop plans and/or implement conservation actions to protect, conserve, or restore species. So essentially just removing the second clause that's in 6A. And then finally, there's one other strategy currently which is to evaluate the effectiveness of current management practices and past investments to sustain and enhance wildlife and native plant populations. So, Madam Chair, that's where the current strategies you're under consideration for Goal 3 for fish and wildlife, and I'll let you guys discuss.
Thank you. Can you scroll up again so that we can see 6A? Because that's where I'd like to focus our discussion. I think we've had a pretty robust discussion about the other strategies under fish and wildlife goal, but option 1 and 2. So committee members, are there any comments? I see a hand up by Representative Hansen.
I'd move to adopt 6A for Goal 3.
Thank you. There's a motion to adopt 6A for Goal 3. Any discussion on that?
Yes.
Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could staff offer some examples on what projects might or might not be supported under one version of that goal versus the other? The narrower scope makes me concerned that we're going to be overanalyzing a project's worthiness, and I'm not entirely sure that I'm clear on what the difference or the actual impact would be.
Thank you for that question. So you're suggesting that 6A really is too discrete and that it'd be better to have 6B, which is a little bit more broad. Is that and are you asking staff to comment on that?
If they would like to, otherwise,
Okay.
Yeah, I think you take my meaning very well, Madam Chair. I'm concerned that it's too narrow.
Okay. Comment from staff on that question.
Madam Chair, Rep. Heinzman, the way staff looks at this, it's not necessarily that 6A is more limiting than 6B. It's just 6A provides a little more clarity about a certain priority under that. So I don't think staff interprets 6A as precluding things that don't maintain or connected or continuous habitat. We look at it as simply creating an emphasis on that. So I think 6A and 6B both would provide for the same type of projects, but it would just create an emphasis having the extra language in 6A that something that the commission would be looking for.
Thank you. Representative Heinzman?
I think that if we could say the same thing with less words, I think we'd be better off. Just my 2 cents.
Okay. Representative Hansen, do you have any comment?
I think that the one that has the more detail, the protect, conserve, and restore species mirrors the kind of constitutional language. And so that's helpful overall. In addition, we know that connected and continuous habitat is really important. So we're not funding random acts of conservation that are isolated, trying to make sure that we're prioritizing, things that connect in holdings, in infill. Connecting is good for habitat and for projects as well, that we should get those connections done if we have limited money, which we always do, to prioritize there, and that would help out with habitat. So I'd encourage a yes for the A. I think Representative Heinzman, that it does kind of prioritize, if we're doing acquisition, those that are needed rather than buying a random spot that's isolated that may not provide the overall habitat benefit.
I see Ms. Langseth's hand up, and then Representative Heinzman after her. Ms. Langseth.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to echo what Representative Hansen was saying. In particular, the habitat connection is really important. So that's language I would like to see kept as a priority. Thanks.
Okay. Representative Heinzman.
Yeah, if Representative Hansen could maybe give me an example of the random act of conservation or what have you that he might be referring to. I'm trying to remember what that might look like or what he might be referring to, and I'm struggling a bit.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Heinzman. Let's say there's a tract that's a 40-acre tract of property for acquisition that is isolated, may have a willing seller. Maybe it's an NGO that has worked with the willing seller, and they say, well, let's get that 40 acres. And what if there versus 2 40-acre tracts that have a 40-acre tract in between that would provide the connectivity? So it's something where we've already done the acquisition. That's more on, let's say, a wildlife management area or a scientific and natural area. The other might be a trail system rather than starting the trail with an acquisition. Here we're going to start. As you know, we have trails that aren't completed, and maybe there's just one section that is left to try to prioritize that so that there's completion of projects rather than starting a new one or one that is isolated. I don't know if that helps with the explanation or not.
Thank you, Representative Heinzman.
It helps. Thank you.
All right. With that, Representative Hansen re-ups his motion, and we'll take a roll call on this. The motion is to adopt 6A as the option for the 6th Fish and Wildlife goal. Staff, would you take the roll, please?
Albrecht.
Yes.
Albrecht, yes. Green is excused. Hansen.
Yes.
Hansen, yes. Heinzman.
No.
Heinzman, no. Langseth.
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. McEwen. McEwen is excused. Reese. Reese is excused. Madam Chair, we have 3 yes and 1 no.
So that motion fails. I'm going to suggest that, are there other options that folks would like to move for this particular goal strategy? Hearing none, then I would like to take a vote on the strategies for fish and wildlife that include 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7. To adopt those, is there a motion to adopt goals or strategies 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7, which would be renumbered to 6?
Madam Chair, I believe Representative Heinzman's hand is up.
Representative Heinzman, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I was just curious, what was the alternative option to the more lengthy verbiage that we just were unable to pass? Was there an alternative that
Yes, there is.
we could
And
consider?
thank you for that question. So the option is 6B, develop plans and or implement conservation actions to protect, conserve, or restore species.
If no one else would make that motion to accept that language, I would do that.
So we have a motion to accept language for 6B, develop plans and or implement conservation actions to protect, conserve, or restore species. Discussion to the motion. Seeing no hands go up, I will have the staff take the roll on this motion.
Albright,
Yes.
Albright, yes. Green is excused. Hanson,
Yes.
Hanson, yes. Heinzman,
Yes.
Heinzman, yes. Langseth,
Langseth, no.
Langseth, no. McEwen, McEwen excused. Reese, Reese is excused. Madam Chair, that is 3 yes, 1 no.
Thank you. So that motion fails. So what are the committee's wishes? Would you like to continue to adopt this set of strategies based on what is before us, with excluding that goal strategy 6? If so, is there a motion to approve the strategies excluding strategy 6A or 6B? I have a motion, a hand from Representative Hanson, and then also Ms. Langseth. Representative Hanson.
I would move a 5-minute recess to determine if these other members are actually going to come back or not.
Okay, thank you. So the chair will call a 5-minute recess to confer with absent members and see if they're able to come back into the meeting. Thank you. We are recessed for 5 minutes. Hello.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Representative Hanson.
I think we're ready to go.
Okay. I would turn my video on, but I think staff turned my video off, so I'm not able to turn it back on until they do. But here we go. Here we go. So thank you for that time for a recess. Representative Hanson, do you have your hand up?
Madam Chair, what I would propose to do is that we don't have an affirmative vote for the Fish and Wildlife, that we come back to that, but that we move to the communications and process goals and strategies for consideration. And I would move that adoption once Mr. Campana describes the proposal.
So we have a motion to approve the communications strategies, goals and strategies. Mr. Campana, I'm going to give you a moment to regroup and find your place in our agenda. And perhaps you can bring that information up on the screen for us. So I'll give you a moment to do that.
All right, Madam Chair, I will share my screen with that.
And as he's doing that, I will set aside the completion of the goals and the strategies for the Fish and Wildlife to a later time in our meeting when we have more members.
All right, Madam Chair, if you're ready, I'm ready.
Yes, go ahead.
All right, so members, I'm going to be working from this document that's titled LCCMR Communications and Proposal Process Goals and Strategies for 2025 to 2031 draft. Just a few notes on this as I go through this. You all completed many of you completed a survey last month regarding priorities for LCCMR goals and strategies. So we've actually renumbered the goals and strategies from what you saw last time. So this numbering now represents the priorities based on that survey. So goal 1 through 7 roughly reflects the priorities in terms of what's the most important goal versus a goal that's slightly less important or is slightly less of a priority, I should say. So I also want to point out goal 2 and 3 are grayed out. This is because these are the 2 goals and strategies that you've already adopted. So, but I wanted still to have it here so you could see a full, complete list of the goals. So goals 1 and goals 4, 5, 6, and 7, and the related strategies were discussed at the last meeting and voted on as a group. That vote did not achieve the 4 members supporting threshold. This document, as written, is going to reflect basically the goals and strategies as they were moved at the last meeting. So if there were strategies that were not part of the motion, they're not currently on the list here. If there was words added as part of the motion, they are included here. So very quickly, just to summarize, goal 1 is the LCCMR recommends projects that will provide the most benefit to the environment and natural resources. And then I'd say goal 2 and 3 have already been adopted. So I'm going to move to goal 4, which is the LCCMR process for selecting and recommending proposals is transparent, understandable, fair, and accessible for all Minnesotans. Goal 5 is LCCMR staff are timely and effective in responding and communicating to applicants, project managers, and LCCMR members. Goal 6 is groups and organizations that have not traditionally participated in the LCCMR process understand the purpose of the NRTF and LCCMR and how to apply for funding. And goal 7 is the public knows how NRTF money is spent and what benefits the public is gaining from those expenditures. So I've just shown this to you on the screen just with the goals. Now I'm going to expand this so you can see all the strategies under these goals. Actually, for goal 2 and 3, I'll keep those under, since you already adopted those, I won't show those. So Madam Chair, I don't know if you want me to go through the strategies under each of the goals right now, or how would you like me to proceed at this point?
Yeah, I think what I'd like to do, well, I see a hand up, so I'll take that question first. Representative Hansen.
Just to clarify earlier, I would move goal 1. That appears that it did not require the 4 votes or did not achieve the 4 votes at the meeting on July 31st. So I would move that goal 1. It doesn't appear to have any amendments or changes. So I'd move goal 1 for adoption.
So I have a motion for goal 1 and the strategies that are on the screen there, 1 through 4. Are there any comments about this motion? Seeing none, the staff will take the roll on this motion.
Albrecht.
Yes.
Albrecht, yes. Green is excused. Hansen.
Yes.
Hansen, yes. Heinzman.
Yes.
Heinzman, yes. Langseth.
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. McEwen. McEwen is excused. Reese. Reese is excused. Chair Albrecht, 4 yes, 0 no.
So that motion passes. Let's move on to the next goal that needs to be addressed, and that is goal 4. So goal 4 is has 7 strategies within it. Are there any questions about that goal? Representative Hansen.
Madam Chair, I would move adoption of goal 4.
So I have a motion to move adoption of goal 4 on the strategies listed. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll have, yes. Did I hear someone? Seeing none, I will ask the staff to take the roll.
Albrecht.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did Representative Heinzman, did you have your hand up?
I did. I was wondering if someone could please read the goal. I can't
Okay.
move beyond
I can,
what's on the screen there, so I was hoping that I'm looking at the right thing.
yeah, thank you for the question. The goal number 4 is the LCCMR process for selecting and recommending proposals is transparent, understandable, fair, and accessible for all Minnesotans.
That's great. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. With that, I'll have the staff take the roll on this question.
Albrecht.
Yes.
Albrecht, yes. Green is excused. Hansen.
Yes.
Hansen, yes. Heinzman.
Yes.
Heinzman, yes. Langseth.
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. McEwen.
Yes.
McEwen, yes. Reese. Reese is excused. Chair Albrecht, we have 5 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. That motion prevails. Let's move on to goal number 5. Goal number 5 is LCCMR staff are timely and effective in responding and communicating to applicants, project managers, and LCCMR members. There are 3 strategies in that goal. Are there questions about that? Representative Hansen.
I would move adoption of goal number 5.
There's a motion to adopt. Is there any discussion about the motion? Seeing none, we'll have the staff take the roll on this motion.
Albrecht.
Yes.
Albrecht, yes. Green is excused. Hansen.
Yes.
Hansen, yes. Heinzman.
Yes.
Heinzman, yes. Langseth.
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. McEwen.
Yes.
McEwen, yes. Reese. Reese is excused. Chair Albrecht, we have 5 yes, 0 no.
So that goal number 5 is, and the strategies are adopted. Let's move on to goal number 6, which is groups and organizations that have not traditionally participated in the LCCMR process understand the purpose of the ANRTF and LCCMR and how to apply for funding. And there are 3 strategies within that goal. To that goal, what are the committee's wishes? Representative Hansen.
Move adoption of goal 6.
I have a motion for adoption of goal 6. To the motion, is there any discussion? Representative Heinzman.
This may be a question for Representative Hansen or others, if not having been able to be at the last meeting and discuss that goal more. Was there any discussion of how groups and organizations that are not traditionally participating in the LCCMR process would be made to understand?
Thank you for the question. That's kind of what the strategies beneath here help define better the goal. So to that question, I would say the first strategy might be the most applicable. So it says contact leaders, leverage existing connections and networks, and build relationships with communities and organizations that have not traditionally participated in the LCCMR process, including communities of color, tribal communities, and small nonprofits, to determine the best ways to communicate and conduct outreach with them. There's also two other goals or strategies. One is to carry out targeted outreach and to produce materials related to the ENRTF and the LCCMR to include written, audio, video, and to more accessible, to make it more accessible to groups. Representative Heinzman.
Director Nash, thank you, Madam Chair. How is that different from what we're already doing? If it isn't, maybe there's nothing more to discuss and we can just pass this and move on.
Becca, would you like to answer that?
Chair Albrecht, yeah, I mean, I think that there have been efforts on a staff level to do some of these things, but they've been fairly limited in scope and the amount of time that we've dedicated to it. So I think that this would just be emphasizing and perhaps expanding on some of the things that we've already done.
Thank you. Representative Hans, Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up on that. So maybe Director Nash could tell me, do we have the staff capacity to take on all of that in addition to what we're already doing, or are we going to be hiring more people?
Director Nash.
Chair Albrecht, with the current staffing levels, we would not be able, to probably ramp this up too much more than we've already been doing. However, we do have approval for 2 additional staff that we are hoping to hire in the not so distant future.
Thank you. Representative Heinzman, any other questions?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Representative Hansen.
I think, part of the responsibility is not just on the staff, but on the LCCMR members on trying to outreach. I know that Representative Heinzman, I think you remember when we went through on the reauthorization debate, there were folks who said they just weren't aware or didn't have the understanding of the process for applying. And so I think we can always do better and trying new approaches and different ways. That's something that we can do as LCCMR members. And for those of us who are in the legislature to share it with our peers so that they're aware and can help get the word out to their constituents.
Thank you. So we have a motion to approve goal 6. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, will the staff take the roll to approve goal 6 as presented?
Albrecht.
Yes.
Albrecht, yes. Green is excused. Hansen.
Yes.
Hansen, yes. Heinzman.
No.
Heinzman, no. Langseth.
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. McEwen.
McEwen, yes.
McEwen, yes. Reese. Reese is excused. Chair Albrecht, we have 4 yes, 1 no.
That motion prevails. Thank you. So on to goal number 7. Goal number 7 reads, the public knows how ENRTF money is being spent and what benefits the public is gaining from those expenditures. What are the committee's wishes on this goal? There are 5 strategies under this goal. Representative Hansen.
So I'm about to move it, but I want to just draw attention to strategy 1A, focusing less on technical information and more on storytelling. I understand that on a strategy, but also want to make sure we're clear that things are scientifically based and rational. Just leading with that, focusing less on technical information and more on storytelling. I understand that as a strategy. I'm not sure if that's the way I would lead with it, but I am going to move goal number 7 for adoption.
So I have a motion. I have a motion for to adopt goal number 7 and the strategies listed. Questions to the motion, Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Hansen, is there any interest in a discussion on pulling the storytelling goal?
Representative Hansen.
I would be open to adapt my motion to just say focusing, or maybe we just drop number A.
Would you
Madam
like to
Chair,
amend your motion,
I would.
Representative Heinzman?
That would be my suggestion. I appreciate Representative Hansen's suggestion.
Representative Hansen.
I would adapt my motion to drop 1A and then move forward with the rest of the comprehensive goal number 7.
Thank you. Member Langseth.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. My sense is from this is that, like, as we're reaching out to the public, rather than in a dry, like, this is the amount of acres we're affecting, and, you know, more of that dry language, but telling a story of, like, how is this money actually impacting Minnesota's landscape? That's my sense from point A, not that that we're not going to be collecting that information, but it's more of like to the public, it'll be a little bit more interesting and impactful if there's actually a level of like creative storytelling with it. And I'd be curious to hear from Director Nash if that's or Mr. Campana if that's correct.
Thank you. Would staff like to respond to that question?
Mike, do you want to, or would you like for me to?
Becca, you can go ahead.
Okay. I think you're all on to it, and maybe it's more about in addition to the technical information that we tend to provide already, we might sort of venture out more into the storytelling and keeping the audience in mind. I think, Shona, what you're saying makes sense, that at some level to reach some people, you need to say things in a little different way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, I think it could say focus on technical information and storytelling and keep it all in there personally. So maybe take the less out and the more out, and it would be probably as helpful with that change as well.
Representative Heinzman, are you okay with Representative Albrecht's or Chair Albrecht's? I downgraded you there, Madam Chair, with your suggestion of taking the adjectives out.
So the strategy would say focusing on technical information and storytelling, so we could have the best of both worlds there. Representative Heinzman, would you support that?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Hansen. I think that it kind of gets at the issue, and hopefully staff can sort it out when they're trying to figure out how to address it. So I'm fine with it.
Thank you. So Representative Hansen, would you like to adopt that language in your motion?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. So any other comments to the motion to adopt goal 7 as amended? Hearing none, we'll have staff take the roll on that question.
Albrecht.
Yes.
Albrecht, yes. Green is excused. Hansen.
Yes.
Hansen, yes. Heinzman.
Yes.
Heinzman, yes. Langseth.
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. McEwen.
McEwen, yes.
McEwen, yes. Reese. Reese is excused. Chair Albrecht, we have 5 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. That motion is adopted. And with that, we have adopted all of the LCCMR communications and proposal process goals and strategies for recommendation to the full commission. So thank you all for that. With that, I'd like to move back up to the item where we weren't able to come to any agreement, and that is on ENRTF strategies, which we had a discussion on. There were 7, and number 6 we were not able to adopt. I see a hand up, so Representative Hansen.
And Madam Chair, I'm not sure if we have council on board, but voting on the prevailing side when it didn't achieve, so I think a no vote was the prevailing side.
So to that point, Representative Hansen, would Member Langseth like to move the strategies, the ENRTF strategies?
Yes, I would like to move to adopt 6A under goal number 3.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor would you like to, Mr. Campana, I'm going to prevail upon you again to put that on the screen so that we're all very clear where we're at in the agenda, because we have moved this item back down to our current time. So we have before us here under the fish and wildlife goal, number 3, we had 2 options we were considering, and the motion has been made to adopt this goal and strategies, including option 6A. To that motion, is there discussion? Seeing no hands go up, I'm going to ask the staff to take the roll on this motion.
Albrecht.
Yes.
Albrecht, yes. Green is excused. Hansen. Hansen.
Hansen is muted.
Heinzman.
No.
Heinzman, no. Langseth.
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. McEwen.
McEwen, yes.
McEwen, yes. Reese. Reese is excused. Going back to Hansen. Representative Hansen. I don't know if Representative Hansen is having technical issues.
Madam Chair, barring a technical difficulty, I think we've had adequate time.
I'd like to see if we can get Representative Hansen to unmute his phone, or can staff unmute for him? There he is. Representative Hansen. To the motion, Representative Hansen, how do you vote? Maybe you can show us by putting a hand up or a finger up or something, and we can't hear you.
Okay. I think he's indicating to me yes.
Yes.
There we
Representative
go.
Hansen votes yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hansen, yes. Chair Albrecht, we have 4 yes, 1 no.
Thank you. That motion prevails, and the fish and wildlife goals and strategies are adopted. Thank you for that. The next item on our agenda is action on number 6, which is the request for proposals. We have the draft request for proposal and priorities before us, and perhaps Mr. Kamahana can bring that up. the highlighted areas are areas to discuss. And if there are any questions about this, we'll take them. But as soon as we get that up on our screens, we can all see what we're looking at. So would you like to walk through this for us a little bit, Mr. Campana?
Yes, Madam Chair. So the priorities presented in the ML 2026 RFP will need to be changed from previous RFPs to reflect the new strategic plan if adopted. So staff have put together this document to reflect how the goals and strategies you have recommended would translate over to the RFP. So I know we went over this at the last meeting, but a number of members weren't present at that meeting, so I thought I'd go over again very quickly and outline here. So the RFP categories would now reflect those recommended ENRTF goals that you've developed, and the RFP priorities under each category would be based on the recommended strategies under those goals. What this does is in some cases, the categories are going to closely match previous RFPs. So like there's still a water category, whereas in previous RFPs, we've had our water resources. In other cases, some of the categories are going to be different. So for example, there would no longer be a category for foundational natural resources, data and information, or aquatic and terrestrial invasive species, but those would still be reflected in priorities under some of the new categories. In putting together this draft, staff also defaulted to only including provisions that have been part of the strategic planning discussions or directly related to constitutional and statutory provisions. So we've highlighted in yellow provisions that have been included in previous RFPs, but at this time are not part of the draft RFP priority section. This is not meant to be a recommendation by staff. It's just simply we defaulted to sort of where your discussions were. And we thought that you could then look at each of these highlighted sections and make a decision whether you want to continue to be a recommendation to have that in the RFP or not. I should just note quickly that this document was discussed the last meeting and you did take a vote, but it did not reach the 4-vote threshold. At this point, if it's helpful, Madam Chair, I can take a break or I can walk through some of these highlights so you can consider them.
Thank you, Mr. Campana. I have a question before we decide about that. Representative Hansen.
Yes, Madam Chair, just clarifying, this is the 2026 RFP for next year, but this is not a strategic planning component. It's not part of the strategic plan, is that correct?
Right. It just recognizes that as we adopt a new strategic plan, we're trying to align the funding priorities in the RFP with that strategic plan.
Madam Chair, I do have a motion to restore one of the shaded areas, but I will defer to your judgment on process.
All right. I think I'd like to go ahead and read through each one individually and see if there are any comments from members. So, Mr. Campana, let's start with this first one.
All right, Madam Chair. So the first highlighted language that has been in past RFPs that isn't currently in this draft is that proposals that address prevention strategies for protecting natural resources that include citizen and community involvement in scientific efforts, or that implement or identify clear strategies for implementing research results are strongly encouraged. So that language has been in some of the previous RFPs in this actual preamble section of the priorities. But because it hasn't necessarily been part of your discussions or directly connected to a constitutional or statutory provision, we sort of at the moment not included it.
All right. Comments on this particular phrase, Representative Hansen.
I would move to restore this proposal. I think the reason it was in there is we were often getting challenges about research, research versus projects in the ground, and that this is a way to bridge that we're talking about implementation in addition to basic research. So researching on implementing results and clear strategies on those implementations. So when there's good work that we're funding, we can also look at implementation. Citizen and community involvement also, when we look at projects, I think is an asset when it's included, and prevention is always better than cleanup.
Thank you. to the motion. So Representative Hansen moves that this language continue to be part of the RFP funding priorities. To that motion, any comment? So hearing none, we'll take the roll on that. Thank you, staff.
Albright.
Yes.
Albright, yes. Green is excused. Hansen.
Yes.
Hansen, yes. Heinzman.
No.
Heinzman, no. Langseth.
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. McEwen.
McEwen, yes.
McEwen, yes. Reese. Reese is excused. Madam Chair, we have 4 yes, 1 no.
Thank you. That motion prevails. So Mr. Campana, on to section A, resiliency.
So
With
in section
no
A,
changes?
resiliency, no changes. Or no changes beyond what you've already adopted in terms of goals and strategies.
Mhm.
Water as well, there was no extra language there that we wanted you to consider. Under C, which would be a new category for education and outdoor recreation, there are a couple spots here I just wanted to highlight. One is one of the priorities would be based on your strategy to design or develop culturally relevant, accessible, and resilient outdoor recreation facilities and infrastructure that create new natural resources-based experiences. Staff have proposed some clarifying language of what natural resources-based means. So we've proposed language that baseball fields, basketball courts, splash pads, playground equipment, and other recreational facilities and infrastructure that do not improve or enhance natural resources or users' experience with natural resources are generally not eligible. And then the second notes under here is past RFPs have include language under environmental education that funding for capital projects will not be considered. And also that proposals to develop new curriculum will not be considered except to allow new modules with an existing curriculum or updating curriculum to reflect current state of knowledge and art.
So those items that you just called out will are suggested to not be listed in this particular funding strategy. Is that correct?
Not suggested. Once again, this is not a staff recommendation. It was just a
okay.
default start so that you could discuss whether you wanted to continue to include those.
All right. Thank you. So to this particular section, what are the committee's wishes? Let's take number 8 there, the first one, where the suggested addition of language includes that highlighted area under number 8 on the screen. Representative Hansen.
I would move the shaded language to be included.
So under the staff note there, those 2 items have been stricken. But there's there's an addition, and then there's some that are being taken out. So what are your wishes on for your motion? Are you moving that section on number 8 be added? Is that what you're asking?
Madam Chair, I'm moving on section 8, but also on the staff notes 2 and 3, and I could explain my motion if you'd like.
Please do. Thank you.
I think on section number 8, this clarifying language is important because there are other sources of funding for that, and this is really infrastructure often that could be, I'm not sure we want to break the seal on getting into school funding on capital projects. I think that there are other sources for that, unless it is something with environment, that it's environmentally connected to meet the constitutional requirement. I know we've had ongoing discussions about curriculum. You know, I think that there's a lot of curriculum out there that, and for having new updates and reflecting current science is really important. But otherwise, we may be inundated with proposals for new curriculum. So that is the reason for my motion.
Thank you. So the motion is then to adopt the language that's added in number 8 and also approve taking out the language that is listed under staff notes. To that motion, are there any questions? Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I think there may be examples where facilities have been proposed that most members of the LCCMR have rejected. There certainly have been examples where most members of the LCCMR approved. And simply taking this away as even an option, I think, is really unnecessary. And the bottom line, as I've heard from a lot of people that have either come to the LCCMR or made proposals or are interested in our projects, there are times when public lands need a piece of infrastructure to enhance the opportunity for them to access or to be able to utilize public lands in a way that most families and folks around the state of Minnesota appreciate. I think that leaving it up to the members of the commission to make that determination makes a lot more sense than simply axing it out. So I would be a no.
Representative Heinzman, thanks for your comment. Just to clarify, the current funding priorities RFP has the statement in it that says funding for capital projects, for example, buildings or building infrastructure, will not be considered in this category. Representative Hansen is suggesting taking that out. So that would no longer be a statement within this category, funding for capital projects. So perhaps it actually does meet what your expectation is. Representative Hansen, did you have any other clarification?
No, I was actually the opposite on those, is keeping them in the RFP rather than taking them out of the RFP.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So you want to add, your motion is to add the language under number 8 and
yes,
to keep the
number 2
highlighted area 2 and 3. I'm
yes.
sorry, I misunderstood your motion. Thank you for that clarification. Representative Heinzman, did you have your hand up again? No. Yes? Were there any other comments to the motion? So the motion is to add that area and to not take out numbers 2 and 3, but to keep them in.
Madam Chair, may I ask for clarification?
Yes.
Under the language, the 2 funding for capital projects will not be considered in this category. That was previously part of the environmental education category. This category now also includes outdoor recreation, so trails, construction, things like that. So I just want to clarify if this motion is to have 2 continue to be in there just for environmental education, or if it applies to the entire category.
Representative Hansen.
It should stay in for environmental education. So I'm, again, back to what I had mentioned. I don't want to be providing for buildings for schools. Those would be education funding. It is not my intent to prohibit trails for outdoor recreation. And those are included up in item 8 in the addition that is not added. So it includes parks, trails, fishing piers, shelters, etc. So it's my understanding that would stay.
Mr.
Maybe
Kapanen,
maybe I'm just confused on them.
does this clarify for you?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for.
So would you like to restate your motion for the record? Or first of all, I have a hand up by Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to point out for the members that may be on the fence, there is an example of a project in my own district, the Brainerd, the city of Brainerd, that has a project that was funded, and it is in a scenic or natural area just alongside our section of the Mississippi, right there by the Brainerd High School. And this is a tremendous resource to the community. And yes, there is a roof there, and there are a number of other facilities. Those kinds of projects really mean a lot to people across the state. And it just axes them because there should be another funding mechanism. That's really limiting. So I would definitely, not just speak against this, but I won't be supporting it.
Representative Hansen, to your motion, would you like to continue to move the entire yellow section? Or do you want to divide your motion, or can you just clarify once more to re-up your motion?
So, Madam Chair, I'm moving adoption of the education and outdoor recreation item number C under 8 to include the section that is highlighted that says baseball fields, basketball courts, splash pads, playground equipment, and other recreational facilities and infrastructure that do not improve or enhance natural resources or users' experience with natural resources are generally not eligible. So that would be included on number 8. And then under staff notes, the sections 2 and 3 that were previously included in this section, but are now included, Mr. Campana, in environmental education. Is that correct?
Mr. Campana?
Yes, Madam Chair, Representative Hansen, that is correct.
Representative Hansen?
As they are included elsewhere, I will drop that section from my motion under staff notes. So the only part that I am proposing that is new to overall, and this would be adopting C, would be number 8, including the baseball fields, basketball courts, etc., that do not improve or enhance natural resources or users' experience with natural resources are generally not eligible.
Thank you. To the motion, are there any questions before we call for the vote? All right. To the motion, please take the roll, staff.
Albrecht.
Yes.
Albrecht, yes. Green is excused. Hansen.
Yes.
Hansen, yes. Heinzman.
No.
Heinzman, no. Langseth.
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. McEwen.
McEwen, yes.
McEwen, yes. Reese. Reese is excused. Madam Chair, we have 4 yes, 1 no.
Thank you. That motion prevails. Moving on to the next highlighted area, Mr. Campana.
Yes, Madam Chair. So under the category for energy, past RFPs have included the following restriction: funding for capital projects, e.g. buildings or building infrastructure, will not be considered in this category. So that's the next. We have not included that by default in the current language, but we thought you might want to consider that, whether you wanted that included or not.
Thank you. To that highlighted area, any comments from the community? Representative Hansen.
Madam Chair, Mr. Campana, is that included anywhere else that would be inclusive of section D?
Mr. Campana.
Madam Chair, Rep. Hansen, I'm sorry, can you clarify that question? I'm not.
Representative Hansen.
Madam Chair and Mr. Campana, so is there an exclusion, a broader exclusion elsewhere in the RFP, so it would not be required here? Or is this the only opportunity to include that?
Mr. Campana.
Madam Chair, Representative Hansen, no, there is no other broader inclusion in the RFP. So this would be, if this wasn't in there, then it would say basically have no statement regarding what capital projects under energy.
Thank you. Representative Hansen. You're on mute. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I think you're having a little technical difficulty using your phone for this meeting, which is understandable. Now try it.
I would move item D and including the staff note number 1, and then I would have a comment.
So I have a motion to approve item D, including the staff note no longer including that restriction on capital projects. To that motion, Representative Hansen.
So this would include research that is like when we had proposed the proposal and had approved the solar panels that were elevated so cattle could go underneath. Is my understanding. This, the purpose of my motion here is not, and including item 1, it wouldn't exclude things like that, but is excluding buildings and building infrastructure.
So to clarification from staff on that, is Representative Hansen understanding correctly?
Madam Chair, there's always been, I think, a little bit of confusion regarding that, but if that is the intent of Representative Hansen's motion, that it's limited to building and building infrastructure, that actually is helpful. Because it could be funding for maybe it could be stated funding for capital projects for buildings or building infrastructure will not be considered. Just take the EG out of there and just make it a little tighter. That actually would help.
Representative Hansen?
As biofuels are indicated in number 1, I don't see building tanks and proposal distillation equipment. Those would be included in a building. That's my also intent there. So I think if you took out the EG, that the building includes those things that are inside that building as well that are capital in nature.
Can you clarify that a little bit better for me? So you're suggesting that you would keep this language in or exclude this language?
Madam Chair, I would keep moving item D with the addition of 1, taking out the parentheses of EG dot comma. So capital projects including buildings or building infrastructure will not be considered within this category.
Okay, thank you. To that motion, any other comments or questions for clarification or comment? Seeing none, we'll have staff take the roll on that motion.
Albright.
Yes.
Albright, yes. Green is excused. Hansen.
Yes.
Hansen, yes. Heinzman.
No.
Heinzman, no. Langseth.
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. McEwen.
McEwen, yes.
McEwen, yes. Reese. Reese is excused. Chair Albright, we have 4 yes, 1 no.
Thank you. That motion prevails. Are there any other yellow items that we need to consider in this section? Mr. Campana.
Madam Chair, not in this section, but section E, fish and wildlife. There were 2 restrictions in previous RFPs related to invasive species. Their control, removal, and maintenance activities of invasive species will not be considered. And the section isn't a restriction, but it was a condition related to invasive species that all research proposals related to invasive species research must consider the research priorities established by the University of Minnesota's Minnesota Invasive Terrestrial and Plant Pest Center or Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center, and that all U of M proposals and others should apply to the centers when applicable, and the centers will keep the LCCMR updated on the status of proposals received.
Can you give us an understanding, maybe either Mr. Campana or Ms. Nash, on why those do not seem to be needed anymore in this particular section of the RFP?
I will defer to Director Nash on that, answer that question.
Thank you, Director Nash.
Chair Albright, I don't know that I can speak to why they are not needed necessarily, but if it would be helpful, I could give a little bit of context about why those conditions may have been put in the RFP to begin with.
Sure, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay. And staff have varied information about the origin of several of these conditions that were added into the RFP historically, but with this one, we have a little firsthand better firsthand knowledge. So thought that we would provide some perspective. So this language was added to the RFP at the time that the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund helped really create and begin funding for both the aquatic invasive species center and the terrestrial invasive species center at the University of Minnesota. And part of what those centers were created to do was really to identify what species Minnesota needed to be thinking about, where the gaps in research were, and then to fund that research and really to kind of do a role that hadn't been filled prior to that, which was coordinate the invasive species research in the state of Minnesota. So funding was and has continued to be provided to the centers to conduct their own RFPs so that they could select and fund the research that they identified as priorities using a coalition of folks, including state agencies, to develop those priorities. So I think the thinking at LCCMR at the time was that these centers were established to do this coordinating role, as well as that the ENRTF was making significant investments in the center, and that I'm not sure that there was an interest in funding additional research beyond what was being provided to the centers. And I think there was also concern that if the centers were in the position to kind of vet and select the highest priority research, if the LCCMR really wanted projects that maybe didn't make it through that process, to come back to the LCCMR and request funding. And was that something that we wanted to do? So just wanted to give that little bit of perspective.
Thank you. Questions to that? Representative Hansen, your hand is up.
I think another perspective maybe on number one, and it relates to number two, is there have been times at the legislature, particularly when there's a new invasive species, aquatic invasive species, that we begin getting individual bills for, let's deal with curly leaf pondweed on my lake. And then there's another proposal for curly leaf pondweed on another lake, and then another lake, and then another lake. And so once you open it up for standard control or maintenance and removal, then you will, another example would be hybrid cattail, that someone wants it on their lake. So you start getting proposals and are suddenly overwhelmed. And so the idea of having things go through number two as well, the invasive and the terrestrial, the aquatic and the terrestrial, is that helps filter out the individual projects of control and maintenance. So, but I'm open to further discussion on this.
So just to clarify your opinion here, you support keeping these in? Is that what you're saying, Representative Hansen?
Yes, I do.
Okay. To the yellow highlighted area, any other comments from members? Seeing none, is there a motion around this particular strategy or funding strategy? Representative Hansen.
I move adoption of E with the highlighted areas to be included.
Okay. Any questions to the motion? Seeing none, the staff will take the roll on the motion.
Albrecht.
Yes.
Albrecht, yes. Green is excused. Hansen.
Yes.
Hansen, yes. Heinzman. Heinzman.
Heinzman, yes.
Heinzman, yes. Langseth.
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. McEwen.
McEwen, yes.
McEwen, yes. Reese is excused. Chair Albrecht, we have 5 yes, 0 no.
That motion prevails. Mr. Campana, anything else in this section of discussion or in the rest of this document?
Yes, Madam Chair. One final section of yellow highlighted language. So as you all know, in previous RFPs, there's been a special category for small projects. Because we've aligned the categories in this draft priority section based on the goals, we have defaulted to not including small projects as its own category. So we thought you might want to discuss that. Staff also did have a question regarding this as you discuss it. because we were wondering if you wanted the emphasis, if there was some emphasis on small projects in the RFP, whether it was a category or something else. Did you want the focus to be on small projects, i.e. projects below a certain size, regardless of the size of the entity applying? Or did you want the focus to be on small entities, or both? So just that question in there, if as you discuss it, would be helpful as well.
Okay, thank you. To this question, are there comments about small projects? Maybe the first question is, do we think that we should continue to have a section that says LCCMR encourages proposals under 250, etc.? Representative Hansen.
I think it's a good idea. We get a lot of unique research projects. I would encourage it to be projects rather than entities, because you could have large entities with small projects, but you may not have. I just think it's the proposals that should rise so that we're picking the best rather than who proposes them. I would increase it to 300K just for inflation.
Thank you. Other comments on this section? I think it's more clear to the proposals if we do call out the fact that small projects are encouraged. I do support increasing the amount. We did just recently increase it from 200 to 250, but as Representative Hansen has noted, it's hard to get projects done for that amount. And some of these are some of the most interesting and best projects that we approve. Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to add my support before we vote for the increase. I think that this is important. It's been a while since we added the small projects category, but I think that there's lots of examples where this has been really a good opportunity to get people thinking about what's possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Heinzman. Would you like to move the addition of small projects in this section and also increase the amount from 250 to 300?
I would. Thank you for that, Madam Chair. I would make that motion.
All right. And to that motion, any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll ask the staff to take the roll on the motion.
Albrecht.
Yes.
Albrecht, yes. Green is excused. Hansen.
Yes.
Hansen, yes. Heinzman.
Yes.
Heinzman, yes. Langseth.
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. McEwen.
McEwen, yes.
McEwen, yes. And Reese.
Yes.
Reese, yes.
Welcome, Member Reese.
Thank you.
Chair Albrecht, we have 6 yes, 0 no.
That motion prevails. So we will continue to keep this language in the RFP, and we'll also support increasing that number to $300,000. So that ends this section of our discussion. Mr. Campana, any other questions from staff on this?
No, Madam Chair. I think that was very helpful. Thank you.
All right. And we're pretty close to being on schedule. So good work, team. We're on to item number 7, which is the evaluation criteria. This we looked at it the last time. It was a bit at the end of our meeting, and so we had a little bit of discussion, but folks felt they wanted to review this a bit more. So Mr. Campana, can you put up the evaluation criteria again, and we can just take a look at that and hopefully get a vote to support.
All right, Madam Chair, can you all see that?
Yes. So I see Representative Hansen, did you have your hand up or? You're on mute for again.
Yeah, Madam Chair, we actually needed to adopt the RFP as amended, so I would move adoption of the RFP as amended to recommend to the full commission.
Well, thank you for that reminder of parliamentary procedure. I appreciate those that are much more skilled at this than I am. So we have a motion on the floor to adopt the RFP sections that we just went through, and to adopt the 2026 request for proposals priorities. To that motion, are there any questions? Hearing none, we'll ask the staff to take the roll on the request for proposal priorities.
Albright.
Yes.
Albright, yes. Breen is excused. Hansen.
Yes.
Hansen, yes. Heinzman.
Yes.
Heinzman, yes. Langseth.
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. McEwen.
McEwen, yes.
McEwen, yes. Reese.
Yes.
Reese, yes. Chair Albright, 6 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. That motion prevails and the priorities and funding priorities are adopted. Now, on to the evaluation and selection criteria. Do you want to make any comments about this, Mr. Campana?
Madam Chair, I was just going to point out, based on your last discussion, staff have made 2 changes to the draft criteria. One, we've added a criteria for completeness and clarity. So the proposal is clear, sufficiently detailed, and includes all required information and attachments needed to fully evaluate the proposal. And then under the capacity criteria, we have simply added and past performance. So it now reads the proposal and past performance demonstrates capacity. Those are the 2 changes from the previous version that was in front of you.
Thank you. So questions about the evaluation selection criteria. You may recall in the past, this was a bulleted list of 10 items that didn't really have any priority or descriptions around them. And so this is I think, a much more clear and prioritized list of how we are going to evaluate and select our proposals. Are there any questions on this? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt as presented.
So moved.
I have the motion from Commission Member Reese to adopt the evaluation selection criteria as presented. Are there any questions or comments to the motion? Seeing none, we'll have staff take the roll.
Albright.
Yes.
Albright, yes. Green is excused. Hansen.
Yes.
Hansen, yes. Heinzman.
Yes.
Heinzman, yes. Langseth.
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. McEwen.
McEwen, yes.
McEwen, yes. Reese.
Yes.
Reese, yes. Chair Albright, 6 yes, 0 no.
That motion prevails and the evaluation and selection criteria are adopted. Thank you. Moving on to the next item on our agenda, which is number 8, discussion and action on measurable outcomes for the strategic plan. We had a brief discussion at the very end of our last meeting to talk about, how do we know when strategic plan is working? How can we evaluate the value and the use of the strategic plan, and did it help in our work? And what will help us understand that we have really met the goals and objectives of the strategic plan. And it was a bit of a brainstorming session about, it could be a lot of things about miles or acres or something protected. Could be the number of projects that we had, or the regions that it came from, or the diversity of projects, or the diversity of applicants. So we had a bit of a brainstorming session, and from that, staff has come back with a bit of a discussion document for us to look at and review. So I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Campana for that discussion.
All right, Madam Chair, I will share my screen again. Hopefully you can all see this. As you mentioned, Madam Chair, you guys had initial discussion at the last meeting regarding measurable outcomes. And after that meeting, it was agreed upon that staff would send a survey to the subcommittee members to list a number of potential metrics for measurable outcomes, and for them, the members to select which ones they think would be the best to move forward. So this beginning of this document actually presents the results of that survey. So we had asked which of the following initial metrics would be most helpful to you in assessing the success of the LCCMR in achieving the LCCMR goal stated earlier in the survey. So those are those goals that you just adopted earlier in this meeting. So dealing with communications, proposal process. So number one choice based on that survey was number or percentage of proposals received for projects in each region of the state. And then it was number of proposals received, then number or percentage of applicants who believe the process is transparent, understandable, fair, and accessible. And then after that, one member selected a number of these other ones, or only one member selected a number of these other options, which were number of social media or website hits, number of proposals from organizations, number of percentage of proposals received from underserved, underprivileged minority groups, number of events where LCCMR is a presence, number of articles published about LCCMR projects. So we sort of looked at the top three, sort of the top ones suggested based on that survey. And I can stop for a second here because it looks like you might have a question or a comment. So,
Yeah.
Commissioner Reese.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question on how many respondents were there? Were there only 3, or did everyone respond?
Mr. Campana.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Reese, a very good question. There were 5 respondents from the subcommittee.
And as a reminder, we have 5 members. So any follow-up, Mr. Reese? No? Okay. I think let's go through this first section of the survey, and then we'll have maybe some more discussion or questions as we go.
All right.
Let's go ahead and move forward to the next question.
All right. So, Madam Chair, the second set of metrics we asked you members to look at were which of the following initial metrics would be most helpful to you in assessing success and progress under the strategic plan. So this is more related to the funding priorities and funding goals that you've made recommendations for. So among the members who responded, 3 members selected number of youths and adults participating in environmental education programs. 3 members selected reduction in greenhouse gas and other emissions. 2 members selected number or percentage of projects funded under each goal or strategy. A couple also selected number of people directly interacting with ENRTF funded projects, such as technical assistance, attending education programs. And 2 also selected number of acres or miles acquired, restored, or enhanced for conservation or recreation. 2 selected number of acres acquired for preservation or conservation, and 2 selected number of acres restored or enhanced. After that, there were a number of options that were selected by 1 member or no members. I won't go through all of those. So looking at this, there clearly seemed to be a member priority on some sort of acreage type metric, and also some sort of people type metrics in terms of how many people are working affected by the projects.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there and go for questions. Commissioner Langseth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, when I was going through the survey, that was kind of the thing was like, oh, I kind of wanted to select all the ones that were basically tracking how many acres or miles had been improved. So I don't know if there's a way we could just actually combine those into one longer sentence, but yeah, that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Reese. You did not have you're taking your hand down, or did you have a question?
No, I do not have a question.
Okay,
Chair.
Thank you. So let's move on to the next section or question on the survey.
So those were actually the 2 questions. There were 2 member comments that came back as well. One was to find metrics related to each goal, and the other was questioning whether the success or failure of a project could be determined using any of the metrics. So those are just 2 comments I also wanted to make sure you knew about in response to the survey. That's the end of the survey results. After that, staff have developed a few options for you to consider as a subcommittee. There could be more options, but we just came up with these sort of starter options. And I can go over those, or you can move on to something else if you'd like.
I'm going to ask for questions on this section first. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to go back to the acres enrolled because we have spent 30 years measuring essentially outputs, not results. Enrollment in acres does not indicate the benefit. A practice may not. An improvement in water quality, an improvement of biodiversity, an improvement of connectivity and habitat does not necessarily come from just the number counting the acres. And I think in many of our evaluations, we're counting what we've done rather than what the results are of what they've done. So an output versus an outcome. Enrolling acres in practices does not necessarily mean there's an environmental benefit. I think when we're looking at trails, number of miles, we have had some very expensive miles on certain trails. And we've had, but it did complete parts of those trails. So user reducing maintenance, improving the water quality, providing new methods of trails, the user experience, those may be other measurements that are better than the miles. The easiest thing to do is to count what we've done, and that's often miles or acres enrolled. And particularly with acres, they could be ephemeral and no longer be providing that practice, or the practice is degraded over time. So in looking at outcomes, what is the benefit, the environmental benefit, and that involves monitoring.
Thank you. Other comments or questions before we move on?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Mr. Reese.
Maybe comments, one possibility is to build into the requirement for proposals that proposers must submit their own metrics for measuring success. And
yeah,
their study needs to incorporate that, because I agree with Representative Hansen that the outcomes are different than some of these numbers, but an outcome can be a research project in and of itself. For example, reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Most project would probably make an estimate on that. They wouldn't actually measure that. And so, and then what? How are you measuring it? What are you measuring? How are you measuring it? How do we know that those are solid numbers? I think that it opens up a whole new line of questioning. So maybe our approach is going back to the evaluation criteria and putting in that proposers must submit metrics and measure their outcomes and submit that as part of their reporting process.
Thank you. Commissioner Langseth.
Yeah, I would add to Commissioner Reese's suggestions there. I just wouldn't want it to become such a burden that becomes a large focus of the project, when really, if they're out there implementing practices, that's what I want them to be spending most of the money on. And maybe it's more of something that internally the LCCMR has to put money towards, is evaluating these different practices and what their actual the outcomes are, as you were saying, Representative Hansen, the environmental benefits. Again, I just want to put that burden, especially on some of the smaller projects, because that would be costly and take up a lot of time.
Thank you. I actually, when we were previewing the meeting with staff, we talked about, we always want to do data-driven decision-making, right? That's like the catchword right now. We want to base our decision-making on stats and past information and that kind of thing. But I think in our cases, it's such a, protecting the environment is such a large kind of thought and idea that I'm not sure it can be sort of filtered down into a set of statistics or something like that. And I also, to the point some of that have been made, not only do we not want to burden our proposers with, a lot of that kind of statistic gathering and reporting. I don't think we want to have our staff spending their time sorting through that kind of stuff as either. I think we're more interested in the larger picture of, how are we doing? So maybe that captures some of what some people have said. Do I see another hand up by Representative Hansen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And maybe maybe there's a third way here, kind of building off of the discussion, and that's encouraging proposals that come in for evaluation of outcomes. So it is, we had tried to do some of this with restoration evaluations in some other funds, but, maybe we need a portion of the fund that goes back and is this, is the research that we did 10 years ago, did it get implemented? As it's been implemented, has it worked? Those might be unique. And on a trail that we're funding, do we go back and look at it 10 years later and see how has it been with the maintenance? Did it cause things? Maybe we need some type of look back that still is to encourage those proposals, those research proposals on evaluation that is still constitutionally viable, but provides us with that information. So it's not the proposer and it's not the staff, but it's actually rigorous to see if it has an impact. My personal opinion is I think we will find that counting acres is not doing that, but it's good to test that hypothesis, and maybe that's something we encourage in the future.
So all good discussion. I'm going to move us on to the next session, Mr. Campana, section of the discussion, because the document continues here and has a couple of different options of how we could approach the idea of, measurable outcomes of the strategic plan.
All right, Madam Chair. So hopefully the result of this conversation will be something that could be included in the draft strategic plan. So staff have sort of, as I mentioned, have three options that we've sort of brainstormed on our own. There may be more options for the subcommittee to consider. So one option, I think it dovetails with some of the discussion you've already been having, would be to select a limited number of basic metrics, but then include an objective to continue work on developing more complete metrics to assess progress under each goal. So I've given an example of what that language could look like. So it could be something like the following metrics will be tracked initially to determine progress toward meeting the goals of the NRTF and the LCCMR. And we've put in 6 metrics here that seem to be the top ones based on the survey. And we have combined some of them, like the acreage ones. So there's just one for that versus, and one for proposals and one for projects and one for number of people participating. But then that would be followed with some sort of statement like additional metrics will be developed that can be collected from project managers to assess the NRTF's contribution towards achieving each strategic planning goal, and options explored for periodic, rigorous, independent evaluation of the effectiveness and impact of the NRTF expenditures. So that's one option. A second option would be not to include any metrics in the strategic plan at the moment, but just sort of that objective towards developing better metrics. So it's very similar to the last part of the current option, but just without any initial metrics at all. So once again, we provided some example language of what that might look like. So the strategic planning goals provide the basis for measurable outcomes for expenditures from the NRTF. The LCCMR will develop metrics and indicators that can be collected from project managers to assess progress towards meeting the strategic planning goals and evaluate success in implementing the strategic plan. Metrics and indicators will be selected that optimize accountability to the public, inform ongoing and future efforts to achieve the goals, and demonstrate what the NRTF and LCCMR have accomplished. In addition, the LCCMR will explore options for more in-depth, periodic, rigorous, and independent evaluation of the effectiveness and impact of the NRTF expenditures. And then option 3 would just be just basic metrics with no specific statements regarding objectives for developing more. So those are sort of the three basic options that staff thought you could start with, and there may be more than these.
Thank you. Are there comments about some of these desired potential options for the strategic plan? Representative Hansen, is your hand up?
I would move option one.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I would move option one.
Option one.
With it's kind of a combination of the defining with number two, like the second defining the last two sentences under the for example on option two be added. So it's one plus, I guess, is the best way, but
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying there. Can you repeat that?
I'm going to withdraw that and just see what other people have to say.
Okay, so we'll have a little bit of a discussion. We can come back to your ideas. One of the things that I would say is that I'm a kind of a visual person, and I like to see sort of a picture of how things look. And so sometimes we can, I think staff would really be helpful if they could present the data and the numbers as an infographic that is a little bit more easily understood, not only by the commission members, but by the public to see, that big picture. So I don't think that trying to track things necessarily also always has to be a chart with numbers and lines and and categories. I think it can often be an infographic that's much more readable and understandable. Commissioner Langseth.
Yeah, I'll just I would throw my support behind option one. Obviously, I've not been on the committee or tracked LCCMR's kind of progress throughout time, but at least it gives us basic metrics. And then I think, hearing from the rest of the committee going forward and developing, more keyed-in metrics for each goal might be helpful going forward. So that's just from my experience. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Reese.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to, if we choose to go with option one, I'd like to propose a change to number two. Just say, add, so total number of proposals received and awarded broken down by region. So we can also track that.
Okay.
In addition, I am questionable on number three. I don't know that we'll ever score high in that area. And I don't know if it's reasonable to think that, because any applicant who doesn't receive funding is going to score that low, in my opinion.
Thank you.
And it's just not, overall, it can be a little cumbersome and to understand, just like we're struggling at times to identify what the metrics are. Thank you.
So you would recommend, just to be clear, that number three might be stricken from this option if you were to support it?
That's correct.
Thank you. Other comments on option one? Seeing none, are there any comments on option two? Or are we all stuck on one? Option two is just basically a paragraph within the strategic plan that would sort of morph all of that stuff into just a paragraph rather than a list. Commissioner Reese.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the easy route because it gives us options, but I also think it just passes the problem down. And I tend to agree that maybe we should address it now and not pass this problem down to someone else.
Okay, thank you. And then let's just look at option 3 again, just as a review, Mr. Campana, if you could scroll up. This is just a limited number of basic metrics, so a little bit different, smaller list than number 1, and also doesn't include that clarifier that additional metrics could be added. So I'm not hearing support for this, but Representative Hansen.
I think I agree with Commissioner Reese and Commissioner Langseth. And looking back at 1, though, I think one thing that we want to use as metrics is we break down, we're talking about region, but also topic. That, is there water quality? Is it environmental education? That we break down, we've got that under each goal and strategy. But constitutionally, I'm wondering if we need a metric that is more mirroring the constitutional language. And I know we're at a late stage, but that might be something for future discussion. But having, if we're measuring the metrics, are we meeting the Constitution and that constitutional language, and looking at how we actually, here's constitutional X, Y, and Z that we're meeting. So
thank you for that comment. So it sounds I'm hearing consensus on option 1 with maybe a couple of adjustments there. What are the committee's wishes on selecting the metric or measurable outcomes for the strategic plan? Representative Hansen.
I would move option 1 with the discussion that has occurred of dropping, but also asking staff to come back with some suggestions at our November meeting for final maybe adoption.
That include
for the full commission to consider that our work would be done.
Okay, and also suggestions from staff that reflect the constitutional amendment. Is that what your question was?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, and are you asking to strike number 3 that Commissioner Reese suggested?
Yes.
Okay. So the motion is to adopt option 1. Select a limited number of basic metrics and include an objective to continue to work on developing more complete metrics to assess progress under each goal, and which has been amended to add the words "and projects funded" on number 2 and strike number 3, renumber the metrics, and also ask staff to bring to our November meeting an additional option that might include how did we meet the language of the constitutional amendment. That clear, Mr. Representative Hansen?
Yes.
To the motion, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll have staff take the roll on the motion.
Albright.
Yes.
Albright, yes. Green excused. Hansen.
Yes.
Hansen, yes. Heinzman.
No.
Heinzman, no. Langseth.
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. McEwen.
McEwen, yes.
McEwen, yes. Reese.
Yes.
Reese, yes. Chair Albright, 5 yes, 1 no.
Thank you. That motion prevails, and that ends our regular discussion. Good job, team, for getting us through on time and even ahead of schedule a bit. So we'll move over on to the last item on our agenda. I just want to, before we move on to the public testimony, ask Mr. Campana to remind us of our next steps with this process.
Yes, Madam Chair. Just congratulations, all of you, for all of your work on this. And I just wanted to quickly go over the next steps and what's going to happen next. So all of the adopted recommendations will be incorporated into a draft strategic plan. So staff will be working on drafting that. That draft plan will also include some basic background information on the NRTF and the LCCMR and a description of the process that was followed by this subcommittee to develop the plan. I expect there also will be some appendices that contain some of the survey results, listening session results, so that's also packaged with that draft strategic plan. That draft strategic plan and a complete draft RFP will be presented and discussed at the full commission level at the November 13th meeting. Following that meeting, commission has any changes at that time, we'll make those changes, but then that draft strategic plan will go out for a public comment period for a couple weeks. We'll gather all those comments together, and then at the December LCCMR meeting will be the time that the commission will make a decision about whether to adopt the strategic plan or not, either as is or with further changes. So that's sort of the next steps moving forward and I'm happy to answer any questions about that if any subcommittee members have questions.
Thank you, Mr. Campana. So just to recap, November 13th is our next meeting when we'll bring this forward to the full commission. Then it will be posted following that for public comment, and then we'll adopt it on our December 4th meeting. So are there questions about that process for Mr. Campana or Ms. Nash?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Reese, Commissioner Reese.
So there was some open-ended items, or at least one with the last motion. So will we meet prior to November 13th or in the early on November 13th to finalize that? Or what's the intention? 10th there.
Thank you for the question. I'll take direction from staff on that.
Madam Chair, that's at your discretion. Based on like that last motion, what we would do is we would incorporate in the draft strategic plan some option for some sort of metric that's more closely aligned with the constitutional language. And there are really two options. One is, yes, the subcommittee can meet and see if it's all right with that language, or the second is just take up the discussion with the full commission at that time with the language in there.
My druthers would be to just bring it all to the full commission and not have another subcommittee meeting, but I'm happy to be convinced otherwise by the committee. Commissioner Reese.
Yeah, I would advocate to handle it within the subcommittee. I think our past experience has not always been great with the strategic plan and the full commission. And so I think if we can handle it and then bring the complete package, I think that would be ideal.
So your suggestion, thank you, Commissioner Reese, would be to meet like at 8:30 instead of 9 with the subcommittee prior to the regular meeting and just adopt that final language?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not opposed to that. Any other comments about that process? Representative Hansen.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. So we have some support for that. Excuse me. Since we've taken, this is a process question, perhaps for the group and for staff. Since we've taken votes individually on all of the sections and all of the goals and strategies within them and the RFP and finally the metrics for the strategic plan, do we need to have a final vote to adopt everything that we have voted on already, or are we good to go with the entire thing? That would be a question I have. Did someone else have a comment on that? Representative Hansen.
We have moved recommendation of the RFP. I would move that we recommend to the full commission the things that have been voted on and decided that we approve that and move it to the full commission.
So Representative Hansen moves the recommendation on the RFP to the full commission. Is that correct? Is that your motion?
We've already done that. I'm moving the strategic plan.
So Representative Hansen moves the strategic plan, not the RFP is separate, and we've already adopted that. So Representative Hansen moves the strategic plan as we have reviewed and voted on. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, the staff will take the vote on that motion.
Albright.
Yes.
Albright, yes. Green is excused. Hanson.
Yes.
Hanson, yes. Heinzman. Heinzman. Okay. Langseth.
Langseth, yes.
Langseth, yes. McEwen.
McEwen, yes.
McEwen, yes. Reese.
Reese, yes.
Reese, yes. Going to circle back to Representative Heinzman. Doesn't appear to be here. Chair Albright's 5 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. That motion prevails, and we're good to go to bring this forward on November 13th to the larger commission. Is there anything else with regard to this before I go on to the last item, which is public testimony? Any other comments from staff or from members? Seeing none, just give yourself a pat on the back for persevering through the process, especially in a remote setting. I appreciate that very much, and all of your hard work and decision-making as well. So I'm moving on then to the last item on our agenda, which is public testimony. Staff, are there any folks lined up for public testimony today?
No, Madam Chair, there is no one signed up for public testimony today.
So no one is signed up for public testimony. So in that case, if we have, I'll just ask staff one more time if there's anything else we need to address before I ask for a motion to adjourn.
No, Madam. Director Nash has something.
Director Nash.
Madam Chair, I just want to give an extra kudos to Mike Campana for leading this effort on behalf of staff. He's done a tremendous job.
He has. I have loved working with him. I really appreciate all the help he's given me as well. And finally, from that, we will ask for a motion to adjourn, or I will call it adjourn. Do I get to say? I get to say we're going to adjourn.